So a lot of people were watching that Oval Office meeting very closely, but I want to know what you saw as you watched. We asked both of you to pick a moment. So, Catherine, why don't we start with your pick?
As you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace, that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together. And we have done that in the past. And part of that, as the President just said, is with respect to our own security.
So, Catherine, from your vantage point in Ottawa, why that moment?
Well, before they even walked into the Oval Office, Adrienne, it was clear that this was the moment that was going to require the most political deftness from Mark Carney. When Donald Trump questions Canada's sovereignty, what is the right amount of pushback? Too much, you risk provoking Trump in the Oval Office, and Volodymyr Zelensky showed us how bad it can be when Trump loses his cool. But if Carney had just sat back, that certainly wouldn't have lived up to the elbows up tone from the campaign he just ran. So to try to walk the right line, he tried to speak Trump's language, talking about real estate. He tried to use a bit of humor there too, talking about the owners of Canada. We saw that humor again a bit later when Trump said about the 51st state, "We'll never say never." And Carney kind of wiggled his eyebrows, he smiled while mouthing, "Never, never, never." So trying to push back, but trying to diffuse the tension, though it is worth noting that while Carney got that pushback in, it didn't seem to change Trump's mind.
Okay, noted. Paul, let's watch what stood out to you as our Washington correspondent.
See, the conflict is, and this is very friendly. We're not. This is not going to be like we had another little blow up with somebody else. That was a much different. This is a very friendly conversation. But we want to make our own cars. We don't really want cars from Canada, and we put tariffs on cars from Canada. And at a certain point, it won't make economic sense for Canada to build those cars.
Okay, it's a consistent view. Take us through what you saw there, Paul.
Yeah, well, Catherine mentioned Zelensky. The Zelensky Oval Office meetup really was the kind of low bar for how these things can go. So everybody wondered, would this all somehow implode today, or would the vibe be okay? And look, spoiler alert here, by and large it was okay. Trump opened with all kinds of friendly tone. You ran a great campaign, greatest political comeback in history, we got lots in common kind of thing. And that's massively important, right? But you always knew, lurking in the background, was what this meeting was really all about: trade and Trump's position on U.S. Canada trade, especially vis-a-vis the auto industry. If Carney needed to say to Trump's face, Canada's not for sale, which he did, Trump needed to say to Carney's face, I want cars built in America. And so in that clip, while Trump began with friendly stuff, not like that blow up we had with someone else, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, he ended with, P.S. I want cars built in America. Mark Carney said going into this that it would be a difficult conversation, and that is why it is difficult and why it will be difficult, even though it was all framed by niceties.
I mean, obviously the tone matters, as you suggest there, Paul, but results clearly matter more. Catherine, any indication anything tangible was achieved here?
We don't really know yet, Adrienne. Mark Carney said more conversations to come, and it's true that Carney didn't experience a big blow-up. He's getting some warm words, but I thought it was interesting. He pulled almost a sort of reverse Justin Trudeau here. Trudeau liked big announcements. He was criticized for not always following through with them. Carney came out and basically said, okay, talks continue. I told you there wouldn't be white smoke, so pushing down expectations, but can he deliver results in the coming weeks? If you're an auto worker, or you work in the steel or aluminum industry, even the film industry, which was threatened this week, it's not clear how much of a difference today made. Now, no one could reasonably expect this trade war to be resolved with the snap of your fingers, but significant weight still rests on Mark Carney's shoulders. One Canadian business leader said today he was encouraged by this first meeting, but on trade, this uncertainty cannot last.
Paul, just back to the clip you picked, right? And this obvious reference to Zelensky that we've talked about. We've seen a few of these meetings play out. They can ultimately really be telling.
Yeah, I mean, in a number of ways, right? Not least in the different approaches national leaders take with Donald Trump. Zelensky being one path, Britain's Keir Starmer being maybe at the other end of the spectrum, right down to pulling out that invite from the King for a visit to Buckingham Palace. Carney seems to have recognized the value of what you might call the forceful middle ground. Be respectful. don't insult, but lay out your positions firmly. Carney had two audiences, the guy sitting right next to him, but also the millions of Canadians at home who voted for someone to get those elbows up without exploding everything. Zelensky left with nothing. Carney had a lengthy working lunch after the Oval sit-down and the start of a process, we presume, to move things forward. I think it's fair to call that a win.
Okay. And so, Catherine, at this point, what is the next big moment you think we should be watching for Mark Carney?
Adrienne, he's got so much on his agenda: restarting Parliament, a throne speech given by the King. There are other things that are important but less public-facing, like choosing his staff. But in terms of what's next, he has a virtual meeting with the premiers tomorrow at a time when Alberta's premier has been beating the drum of discontent, even estrangement from the rest of Canada. And then next week, he's going to unveil his cabinet, the people who will both help him navigate this trade war and try to fulfill his domestic agenda: a tax cut, growing the housing supply, and, as Carney puts it, making Canada the world's leading energy superpower.
And Paul, just one very quick last thought to you. After all of this, Trump also called the meeting great. Is that a good thing?
Truth? You never know. You can read into it that the relationship is already better than it was with Justin Trudeau, let's say. You can read into it that Trump could have said terrible things, and yet he chose not to. I think if you'd asked Mark Carney beforehand if he'd be all good with Trump saying that it was great, I suspect he'd say, I'll take that, despite the many challenges that still lay ahead.
Indeed. All right, Paul Hunter, Catherine Cullen, thank you both, as always.
Thank you.